Here's the jig I made for setting up these sponsons so I can accurately get them aligned with the tub. I want them to be parallel to the tub, and I want to requalify the angles on the sponsons. In a wood kit, the sponsons are the boom rods go in these boom tubes, which are epoxied in wooden formers that have the whole laser hole in there accurately placed to orient the sponson. So these being cut off of fiberglass hull, they were qualified, all the angles were set up in the mold. So I need a way to attach the fiberglass to the boom tubes which go into over the rods. Here's a concept sketch of the formers that I'm building for in here. So this is a former, here's a former for the back sponson tube. And so this gives the dark lines is the glue surface and support. And for the front one, I'll have a longitudinal former, and then these two here. And again, the boom tube, you can see the center line and circle work goes through. So the rear one will be supported. It'll be going through the side of the sponson and from the outside. This will be all internal. So it'll be supported by that side, the outside of the sponson. This one in the inside there would be supported by that former. I've built this jig on my building board. It's a nice flat surface. And the jig is this piece of pine going through here. It's a 3/4 inch piece of pine. So I cut it to length. If you'll notice in this picture I'll put up, there's pockets that these boards fit into on the bottom side of the sponson, and they run flat with the bottom of the hull. So I figure if I get that surface requalified, all the angles on my sponsons will fall in. So this is setting my width. This pine board, jig board here, goes in maybe an inch inside that pocket under there. These strips here on the board are holding the fuselage square to everything. The board is on, the pine jig is on my building board. So I need to raise the tub for this boat. That was 3/4 inch clearance underneath the UL19. I'm raising up to an inch. So some of the measurements I'm watching or setting up, I got this blocked up an inch. So that sets the height off of the building board. These blocks here are epoxied onto the pine jig, perpendicular, and that is holding them square, perpendicular to the hull. So I have a screw going into the side of the sponson, into the fiberglass, and then I made up this block, this clamp, which is holding this down flat on that board, which is in the pocket. So when I built the tub on a flat surface, and I epoxied in the brass tubes that run through the tub. They kept these parallel. So I have the formers made front and back. Here's for the front boom tube. Here's for the back boom tube, as I showed in the sketch. So these blocks are not part of the build, they're just for setup. And I epoxy these formers in, hold them against the block. It's going to give me a nice square box. I've drilled the holes after I had these glue strips in, had this framed in. I simply slid the sponson rod over to there, marked it, drilled them holes. So after I epoxy these formers in, I'll simply slip this block out with that screw. Here's how I'm verifying the angles on the sponsons. This digital pitch gauge. Then I am simply holding this pitch gauge, lining it up with that ride pad, eyeballing that up. It's kind of hard to do for the camera here, but I have the flashlight shining in there to light that up. So that's how I'm checking my setup. So before I epoxy everything in, I wanted to be able to verify by putting that pitch gauge on the actual surfaces, the bottom of the tub and on the ride pads. So you can see in these pictures that I have managed to do that. I've succeeded in qualifying all my angles. The rear formers are ready to be epoxied in. That setup is done. So right now I'm at the point where I'm making the former that's going to go inside behind these formers. So what I have is a block up front drilled, hold everything square, and that's holding the spacing on these formers. And I need to be able to remove that block. I need to hold that in place and slide this whole block with all these formers in, epoxy it in place, and then I'll pull these pins with pliers and pull this block out, put a screw in this block, slide this block out. So that's the point where I'm at right now. And these surfaces here, the shapes for these formers, pretty challenging to make. I've made several paper templates and every one is a little bit different. It's fiberglass. So here's some other templates that I've made for the formers that are already done. But this former is a little bit different because I need to reach in there. I can slide this boom tube back. I got on a screw and I need to reach in there and fit it up. Cut it to the shape where it fits in, and then make a wooden one from that. So I have this former epoxied in here. These are glue surfaces when I close up the sponson. Make up fiberglass sheet in the back. Glue surfaces through here. I already have these formers notched out. I can't put those strips of basswood in yet because I need to slide that whole assembly in there and epoxy it in first. So then I'll put these strips top and bottom for glue surface, and then when I close the sponson in, make a sheet of fiberglass, close this whole side in. I have the boom tubes. These will be sticking through that sheet. It'll go on them rods. And this whole setup, like these rods here, needs to be relaxed. You can see how the alignment is. Everything in place. All these rods, I can spin them. So when I epoxy it all together, should have all my surfaces on my sponsons qualified.